Is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. My name is Janet Ashford, the Executive Director with College Sector Employment Service. Thank you for joining us today. Our webinar, which is going to be facilitated by Paul Crane. Paul Crane is the CEO of Local Text Marketers, and I welcome him with us today. Just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. To the right of your screen is a questions panel. Please feel free to pose any questions you may have for Paul. My role throughout is to check for these questions and to relay them to him as we go. So don't feel you have to sit back and wait till the end. Please throw those questions out to him. He'd be happy to respond. Now I'm going to pass things over to Paul, and I thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you, everyone. I'd like to start the presentation first by, of course, thanking Janet Ashford so much for inviting me to do this webinar for you today. And I want to thank everyone who's on the call today because I know what you do is valuable. I know your time is valuable. So I just want to let you know that I really do appreciate it. As Janet has already said, I am Paul Crane. I'm the CEO of Local Text Marketers. We are an all-Canadian company, and we provide specialized SMS services in North America. If you're not familiar with SMS, it stands for Short Message Service, and it means essentially text messaging. So we went live with our first service in 2013. So we've been doing this for just a little over 5 years now. And today we're going to talk about our Connect service. Now, before I get into it and start telling you really about what it does, let me ask you a question. Are you finding it increasingly difficult to reach clients the old way with voice calls or emails? And if you are, you know, you're not alone, because if you work with people who are struggling financially or in poverty, you know this to be true. After all, this audience just does not have landlines, and they don't have voice minutes on their cell phone, so you can't call them, or they don't have internet data, so you can't email them. To reach them, you know, you have to hope they have a friend or a relative with a landline that you can call and leave a message with, or you can send them a text message. And text messaging is the absolute cheapest way to communicate. And as a result, I'm willing to bet that it's what a growing number of your clients rely on. Certainly, our current clients are telling us that is the case. But there are problems with texting. Obviously, no staff member is going to want to use their personal devices for such communications, which means you either have to obtain office phones for all your staff, which can be expensive, or you obtain a handful of phones to be shared, you know, amongst them. So this is costly. It can be costly at any rate, and it also raises a number of problems. For example, how do you ensure all messages are saved for review, and how do you obtain a record of those messages if a record is needed? Number two, how do you review messaging for compliance amongst staff workers and caseworkers if that is something that is important to you? Number three, how do you maintain the expectation of privacy that exists between a client and a caseworker when a phone is being handed around the office and perhaps shared by a number of different caseworkers? Number four, how do you ensure the client receives an immediate response to his or her inquiries, even if that inquiry happens after hours? Number five, how do you ensure messages that arrive outside of office hours aren't missed altogether? Number six, how do you even know that your client has received your messages? Well, Connect is designed to solve all these problems. And Connect is a cloud-based two-way text message customer support and communication platform. It was designed for social services and employment agencies in direct consultation with social services and employment agencies. And today it continues to evolve based on what our clients are telling us is important to them. So right now, it's used by a growing number of Ontario Works, WorkBC, and Employment Ontario agencies, including 2 college sector employment service agencies, which are Algonquin and Loyalist Colleges, as well as numerous counties and other businesses and organizations in Ontario. Now, before I continue, it's really important to emphasize that Connect is not an app. And this is really important to remember because an app is useless to a large percentage of your audience because they don't have internet data or a newer smartphone to access it, okay? Your clients don't need to download and install anything. To them, your messages will appear like they originate from an ordinary cell phone. And what Connect allows you to do is add all your staff and caseworkers to the system, essentially empowering each of them with their own cell phone. It allows you to save and archive all messages so that there's an easily accessible record of every single conversation. It allows you to ensure complete privacy between every staff member and caseworker and his or her clients. It allows you to receive immediate message delivery status reports so that you know that your clients receive your messages. It allows you to deliver an automatic message informing clients who text after hours that you're not able to respond immediately. And this is important because with texting, people do expect a response relatively quickly. This is a personal communication platform. Number 6, enable email and or text notifications for all new messages. So the system will send you notes so that you know you have new messaging and you never miss anything. Number 7, it allows you to easily manage multiple conversations at once from a simple, intuitive interface for fast, efficient communication. And lastly, it gives people who aren't currently working with you another means of contact and communication. In other words, they can use text messaging to reach out to your organization, to ask questions, to find more about you, what you do, and how you can help them. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch over to a browser window, and I'm just going to sort of walk through the software and show you how it works. It's the easiest way to sort of get a feel for how it works. It's very simple, intuitive software. I'm going to go through sort of bits and pieces at a time, and then I'll stop and ask, if you have any questions. And by all means, if you have a question in the middle of a section, please do, as Janet was saying, just chime right in. I certainly don't mind, and it's sometimes best to sort of address things, when they come up, as opposed to waiting to the end of the presentation to do so. So I'm just going to switch over to the browser, and here we are. This is the Connect interface, or not the interface, the login screen. And like I said, this is an online service, so you don't have to download software. There is no impact on your current systems. This is something that you log into from your desktop or laptop. It is mobile responsive as well, so you can also access it from your mobile device if you want. So what I'm looking at here is the Connect dashboard. And the dashboard provides you with a snapshot of what's going on in your account. To the right here, there's an instructional video, and essentially, if once you've watched this video, or your staff or caseworkers have watched this video, they will be up to speed on using Connect. It's a very, very simple tool to use. We do almost no support as far as usability goes, because it really was designed to be something that you don't need to be technically savvy to be able to use. So just briefly, like I said, we've got some stuff that provides a snapshot. I won't go through it all because we basically provide a definition with these little helps, so you always know exactly what's going on. More help is provided in these windows here. This is an administrative account. The administrator is someone who sets up accounts and has a few more roles in the system. And we'll talk about that as I go through it, but it looks a little bit different than a regular user's account. For example, the administrator can send internal messaging and so forth, and the administrator adds users. So I'm just going to walk through the tool sort of tab by tab and show you how it all works, and then at the end we will talk about questions and pricing and anything else that you may want to discuss. So I'm going to start with users. I'm going to go to the users tab. And a user in Connect is essentially anybody in Connect whom you want to have access. So the people in your organization who you want to be able to empower with the software, you're going to come in here and add them. And adding them simply means you add that person's email address, you add a full name, you add a nickname, say a first name and last initial. You click Generate Password and you click Create. And that's essentially all there is to it. And when you do that, the system will send that person out a welcome email with their own unique access. So they'll have their own username, they'll have their own password. And this is important because what it means is everybody who has access to the system essentially has conversations with clients that occur in this portal, and they aren't shared with anybody else. So conversations that caseworker A has with client A are not seen by anybody else on the system. They only are seen by the caseworker and the clients. With the exception of administrators, administrators can see all conversations. Obviously, there has to be some oversight, and that's what the administrator provides. But only a few people, or the people you choose, will have administrator access. So essentially what you would do is you would just go through here. If there was 10 people in your organization that you wanted to provide access to Connect, you would just come through here, you would add their email addresses and names and nicknames, generate password and create, and that's all you would do, and you would see them down here below. And what you can do a few things here. One is you can add administrator access to other users if you want. So you're probably going to want to have a couple of people with administrative access in case your administrator is away or becomes ill or whatever it may happen. It's simply a matter of just enabling it with a single click. So very simple to use. You can delete users, and when you delete them, you can assign the conversations and contacts that currently belong to that user to another user. So we never actually ever delete anything in this particular system. So, so that's really all there is to it for adding a user into the system. So very, very simple to do. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to contacts, and a contact is essentially to you, it would probably be a client. So if I was a caseworker using this and I wanted to add a contact, I would simply add that person's name, I would add their phone number, and I would assign it. Well, absolutely sorry about that. This assign option is only available to administrators. So administrators, for example, can assign conversations or new contacts to anybody who's in the system. Normal people with regular user access will only be able to assign that to themselves. So unless anybody wants to sort of volunteer their cell phone number so that I can demo this, I'll just use an existing contact. So normally what I do if I do a demo and I can hear everyone on the phone, I'll ask somebody in the room to sort of hand over their phone. But since we're all in different places, I understand why somebody may not want to do that. But it's simply a matter of typing the person's name, their phone number, and clicking the add button. And once that's done, I can simply select that person, and I'm just going to choose a friend here, and I can go to the Connect window. So the Connect window is where all the conversations take place, and a conversation is essentially a text message thread that happens between a user and a client. So a user, again, would be a caseworker or a staff member. So all you need to do is select the person you want and just say, hey, Phil, doing a demo with CSES, and I click the send button. And so what's going to happen is the page is going to refresh. We're going to see it, and we'll see that the message has gone out. This tells us right now that this message has been sent. We talked about delivering immediate feedback. This will actually probably update in a few seconds or a few minutes. It will give us feedback from the carrier networks. This tells you that your user, or sorry, not your user, your client has received your message. For example, the delivered lets us know that on 9/25, June the 20th, we have a new message. And there we go. Phil has responded. I didn't tell Phil I was going to send him a message, but he's responding. And this is essentially how it works. You send a message to your client, they respond, you have your conversation. So now you'll see this particular status is being updated. We now know that my contact has received the message. It was actually delivered to their phone at 10:15 a.m. on June the 20th. Phil responds. I can carry on my message here. I can carry on with the thread with anything that I want to say. For example, hey, don't forget that there's a job fair this weekend, or hey, we're doing a resume seminar this weekend, or whatever it may happen to be. You type your messages in, you press the send button, your client receives the messages, they respond, and so forth. What you will see is when new messages arrive, they arrive here on the left-hand side with a badge indicating this. That there's an unread message there. So this allows you essentially, if you have a large list of contacts, it prioritizes basically conversations with unread messages. You can select an unread message and wait for the page to load up, and there we go. So now I can read the thread that I've got going on here, and I can carry on with it however I like. Typing is not a skill of mine. Excellent. So very, very simple to do. You're going to hear that come in on my phone here in a minute. There it is. So that's my own cell phone, and I would just respond to that, and it would show up here. So very simple. You can either from the dashboard go straight to connect, choose your contacts, or you can add a contact and just go straight to the connect window and start contacting them from there as well. So either way, it's just a matter of adding a contact and starting a conversation. So the other thing I want to show you while I'm here is this ability to archive conversations. So you'll see this red button up here, and we mouse over it, we have two options, end and archive and end and delete. And essentially what this does is if I end and archive this conversation, it's going to take this conversation, whatever's in the thread, and it's going to save it in the archives file. If I don't want to save it, I can end and delete it, and that just simply deletes the conversation altogether, and keeps a record of it, or doesn't keep a record of it. Now, what it doesn't do is delete the contact. So the contact remains active. You can delete the contacts from your contacts tab, but deleting a conversation does not delete the contact. Now, if you're concerned that you wouldn't want your caseworkers deleting any conversations, then the administrator can turn this option off. Okay, so you do not have to offer this option to your caseworkers and staff members. You can only this option here, so end and archive. So I'm going to show you what happens when I select end and archive. First, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to type a note here so you see what happens. The notes field on the right is, for any in-context conversations or whatnot that you might want to make. So this thread, for example, I'm ending it now, but it could go on for, let's say a couple of days or maybe a couple of weeks. We could have a conversation. And let's say, I just wanted to make a couple of notes here to refresh my memory, or just to make sure that I understand the context of this without having to read through a long thread. So I could type that note here. And this note, obviously isn't seen by your clients, and it's just something you're going to be able to see, but it's also saved in the archived file. So when a conversation is ended, whenever that happens to be, I can end and archive it, and when I end and archive it, what happens is it's taken and it goes into the archive section. So here's the conversation I just had with Phil. There's our date. If I look at the view print transcript page, you'll see that the thread is presented. You'll see it's all time-stamped, and any notes that I made will be saved as well. So this allows you to keep records of every single conversation that goes on. And it's very, very simple. Let's see if I can close this off. There's a bunch of buttons from the webinar software in my way.
Just a question when you're ready, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely, go ahead.
Can you print current or active conversations, or only once you archive it?
I believe you can print open ones, because conversations that are open, you'll be able to view them and print them.
Okay.
So what you're seeing here too is this is an administrator account, so the administrator gets to see everybody's conversations in whatever status: archived, open, deleted, archived, contact deleted, archived, open. So you'll see that, and the same thing will happen on basically a user's section, except they'll only see their own conversations, but they'd have to print them from here. Yes.
Okay. And I think Michelle had a question. Maybe you can email Paul directly, because it's with regards to the username and nickname, if you don't mind. It's a little bit. So yeah, no more questions.
Okay. So yes, getting back to Connect, we can, like I said, we can have conversations, we can archive those conversations, we can delete the conversations, whatever we like. What's really cool is, I can just select users from the left here and carry on conversations with them. I just pick one, pick another, type a message, send the message, and select them. If a message comes in while I'm having a conversation, it's going to show up here with a blue badge. So it's really easy to maintain multiple conversations at once, and obviously this interface is really easy to work with as far as typing messages, as opposed to thinking about trying to manage 20 different conversations on a cell phone, for example. So very, very simple to use and very intuitive. The user comes in, adds a contact, selects a contact, opens a Connect window, sends messages, ends or archives conversations as you so like. So if there's no further questions about the Connect interface at the moment, then I'm going to move to this incoming section here, which is the other way that Connect can be used. And what you can do with Connect is you can promote the phone number associated with your account, and this is the number associated with my account, out into the community and use it as another option for contacting. So at the beginning of this presentation, I talked about the fact that a lot of people, especially if you're young or if you're in poverty and so forth, probably you're only communicating via text. Well, that makes it kind of difficult for those people to reach out to you, because they have to either be able to phone you or email or they have to come in physically into your offices and meet with you, which is obviously a bit of a problem, or it can be. What you can do is you can promote your phone number out in the community and say, hey, if you've got any questions about what we do, just text them to this number. So if people respond to that, and when they respond to that, they're going to show up in here. Okay, so they're going to show up in here, and this is going to be something that's accessible to everybody in the system. They'll see this incoming messages badge update with new messages, and people can come in here and they can just take over conversations. So as an administrator, I have the ability to assign any incoming conversation to anybody on the system, but anybody in the system can come in, can assign that conversation to themselves, which basically takes them back to the Connect window, and now I can basically have a conversation with this person. And address whatever conversation, whatever questions they have. At the end of that conversation, you can end and archive that conversation, you can end and delete the conversation, or what you can do is re-release the conversation back into the incoming messages window here. And essentially the reason why you would do that is, let's say you couldn't address this person's question and somebody else would be more suited. So I made a note here so that anybody coming in here can get a little bit of information about who would be best suited to take this conversation over or so forth. So yeah, this allows you to another way to have outreach in the community just by allowing people to text in. And when they do, like I said, they show up in this particular table. Anybody in your system can come in here and assign a conversation to themselves and then start answering that person's concerns and questions and so forth. So it basically expands the functionality of Connect. And you might be wondering why these messages end up here and not with a caseworker. Well, the relationship between a caseworker and a client is made when they add that person as a contact. So messages that show up in this particular table here are from people that nobody on your system has a relationship with. So the way we maintain conversation context is that a user adds a contact, which would be one of their clients. They now have a relationship. So all messaging basically happens between the two of them. When a message comes from somebody who isn't assigned as a contact to any of your caseworkers or staff, there's no relationship, so it goes into this table here, and anybody can pick it up. So any questions at all about the incoming messages feature here and the ability to use this this option to sort of provide an additional means of outreach or so forth?
Nothing yet. Yeah, nothing yet. So
nothing yet?
I'll just give it a minute.
I usually get questions about this, so this is why I'm sort of stopping and asking. Okay, so I'm going to assume that there's no questions, and of course, if you have questions later, by all means, you can email me directly. I'm going to share my contact data.
And I do have some. So, okay, sorry, it just takes a little while for them to type the question in. So,
okay.
So the first question is, can you send a group text?
So this is not a broadcasting tool. We do have a broadcasting tool, so if you want to send, something to hundreds or thousands of people, this is really about, communication with a particular person. There's issues with broadcasting messages to a lot of people. If you're broadcasting, it becomes less of a communication and more of a mass texting, and then we got to include, opt-out information and so forth. So it becomes kind of a bit of a pain in the neck as far as that goes, but we do have a specialized tool for that if that's what you want. And some of our clients actually use both. They use Connect and they use Broadcast, which is our tool that allows you to send essentially one message to dozens or hundreds or thousands of people at once.
But that's just a separate tool from Connect, you say?
Yeah, yeah. So this is not a bulk texting service.
Okay, okay. So this is another add-on that they could purchase from you?
Yes, yeah. It would be a separate tool, but I mean, again, it's competitively priced and so forth. So it would be, you have two different logins or two tools, but yeah, we do have a service that does that.
So there's other service that you have. If you were to send a group email, and then one person was to respond back, do they respond back to all, or can they choose to respond back to just you?
So you're talking about the mass texting service. The mass texting service is more of you got to think of mass texting service of more like an email blast, except that it's more limited in that it really should be about notifications. There's limited ability to respond. Essentially, with text messaging, certain responses have to trigger certain other responses. So I mean, in a broadcast scenario, we have to respond with certain trigger words with certain responses. So, and someone says, I don't think I can, how do I stop getting these notifications from you guys about this job search? I've gotten a job. Well, the word stop, should essentially unsubscribe them from the system. I mean, because any stop command has to, by law, take somebody out of a system. So essentially, there's problems about communicating in a mass texting context that we don't have here. So broadcast is just about broadcasting. Connect is about communication.
I hope that answered your question, Jennifer. So I'm going to ask one. So what about confidentiality here?
So text messaging is, and you'll see this if you look at our disclaimer on our dashboard, text messaging is not secure. So this platform is secure at rest. It's 256-bit encrypted. Everything is secure in it. Our data is all on Canadian servers. Obviously, this is a concern for a lot of Canadian organizations. But text is sent over publicly available networks, just like emails. Okay, so you would have the same policy in place as you would for emails, because this is essentially, once it leaves our system, it hits publicly available networks. So you would never want to use Connect to send, private or sensitive client information, because just like you wouldn't want to send it over email because it's not secure, right? And that's the thing about text. It's so everybody has it. Which is why you want to use it for connection, but you should be using it for simple stuff. Hey, don't forget that we have a meeting this afternoon. Hey, don't forget the job fair. Hey, don't forget that we have this opportunity of some sort. You wouldn't want to send somebody's SIN number in it or anything really sensitive. Okay, you would have the same policies. Most of the organizations that use this basically implement a policy that's very similar to their email policy, because essentially it's very similar. Email hits publicly available networks, so does text. But this platform itself, again, is secure. It's everything in the database is encrypted. But once you send something out of the system, that's just the way all text works.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so we've talked about the incoming messages table, which allows you to provide that opportunity for additional outreach for people to come in and connect with you. We've talked about the Connect table to message. We've talked about the archives a little bit. I want to just kind of touch on the settings a little bit so you can see some of the things that are going on behind the scene. My account, straightforward stuff, set time zone, pretty straightforward. New message notifications. So what you can do is you can enable notifications by email or by text message, so that if you're not logged into the system or you're away from your desk or whatever, we'll send you a note. So every time somebody sends you a text message, we will send you a note out. You can pick the date and the time and your email. If you want text notifications, obviously we'll do that as well. Your clients aren't going to see your personal cell phone number if you put it in here. It's just between the system and you. Pause notifications when I'm logged in, it just simply means that if you got the system up and running, we'll turn them off while you're in here. You probably don't need to receive them, so that's just an additional little bit of functionality. Audio notification of new messages, essentially we'll play a bit of a ding. So if you have the browser, let's say, minimized while you're working at your desk on something else, we'll just let you know with a bit of an audio notification. Conversation deletion, I talked about this. This is the administrator's tool. This allows the administrator to basically enable or not enable the deletion of any conversations that happen in Connect across the tool. So if you do not want your caseworkers to be able to delete conversations, you simply go ahead and do that. Out of office autoresponders, there's actually 2 autoresponders in Connect. And I talked about this again a little bit at the beginning of the presentation, which was essentially, people expect a message, when they're responding to, a text, or, they're sending in a text, they want something. So in our incoming messages table, so if someone, just texts in to ask questions, we have an autoresponder that you can send out. It simply says, we've received your message and we'll respond as soon as possible within regular business hours. So essentially, there's the ability to do that. So anybody who's texting in just out of the blue, we can make sure that they receive a message right away and they understand that they're not going to get an immediate response. But what about, conversations that occur between a client and a caseworker? So the caseworker, let's say, is away sick or something like that, and the client sends some messages in, and all of a sudden nothing's happening, no response. Well, we have the ability to turn on a out-of-office autoresponder. So people get these messages right away, letting them know that you're away from the office and unable to respond and provide some alternative contact data. So this is actually something that we put together for an Ontario Works client, and this is an administrator tool. And not only can you set up your basically out-of-office autoresponder for your entire account, but what this also allows the administrator to do is to turn on the autoresponders of their users. So let's say, for example, Janet is going to be an administrator. She has 10 caseworkers on the system, and all of a sudden she finds out that, Mike has come down with the flu and he's away, and now his clients are texting in and they're not getting anything in response. Well, instead of trying to hunt down Mike's login data and going into his account and turning on his autoresponder, she can just do it from the settings tab. So this is what this is about. It essentially allows you to go in and turn on the autoresponders of any of your staff members in case they're incapacitated or unable to do so. So we deliver a bunch of different messages. If someone's sick, you obviously won't know when they're returning, in which case you don't add a date. If you do know the date, then you can put the date in there, and we will change the message that we deliver. Essentially, it includes alternate contact phone. So if you put an alternate contact phone number in here, you will see that the message will populate with the phone. If you include an email down here, you will see that the message also includes an email. So this provides essentially alternative contact data as well. So if someone texts their caseworker and can't get a response, they're going to get this message right away. So no one's ever left hanging with the system. They're always going to get a reply. Caseworkers are always going to be notified of new messages that show up, so that they're not sort of languishing there, and it just ensures that everyone gets a timely response to any messaging that occurs in the system. And I don't know if you've noticed here, I didn't mention it, but I'm just on the side, I saw this sort of flicker. These guys update in real time. So these refresh every 30 seconds. So if new messages come into Connect, for example, it's what we were talking, this is just a demo account, so it's not going to happen. This would update. So you would see this update and reflect the new messages that are showing up in the account. So in a nutshell, I mean, that's essentially it. You as an administrator, you add your users log in, they add their contacts, they select their contacts, they start a conversation, they have the conversation, and that conversation essentially comes to its logical conclusion, at which point you would do whatever you think you need to do with it. You end it, archive it, or just end it, or whatever it happens to be. So yeah, so that's an overview of the system. There's a little bit more granularity, but I don't usually get into it because it becomes fairly complicated, and usually what happens is you only really need to worry about it if you need it, and if you need it, you'll come across it when the time comes, sort of thing. If that makes any sense at all. So any further questions about the tool at the moment. Janet, if you can let me know, I'll just sit
no,
here
there are no
and wait for a
questions.
few minutes. No questions at the
No
moment?
questions right now. Yep.
So that sort of concludes the demo part of this. At this point, I just want to touch a little bit on the pricing. So the pricing is based on the number of users and message volume. So we are a Canadian company. We price everything in US dollars. It's just because in the tech world, everything is priced in US dollars and all our costs are in US dollars. So it would just be a giant pain in the butt to have to do this in Canadian dollars. It'd be changing all the time. But essentially, 5 users and 600 text messages is US $29.99 a month. 600 text messages actually doesn't sound like a lot, I know, but you'd be surprised. We have a lot of clients with a lot of users on the system, and no one's ever exceeded their monthly allotment, essentially because these aren't sort of the texts that go back and forth between teenagers. It's kind of the text that goes back and forth that says, hey, don't forget the job fair, and someone texts back and says, oh yeah, great, I'll be there, and that's essentially the conversation. So the conversations tend to be quite brief, and they don't sort of carry on. So it actually goes a lot farther than you think. 10 users, 1,000 texts, US $49 a month. Extra users, $2 a month, essentially, up to about 10, and then we discount everything by 20%. So essentially, if you add a user, you're basically empowering them with a cell phone for $2 a month is what it really comes down to. Very, very simple. The way we usually do this is we offer a 30-day demo. I mean, I'd also be happy to get on a call or a live demo with I use the WebEx software with you and key members of your organization and talk about how it could be used, or do this again and address your questions live. And then what we do is we just give you the software for 30 days to play with it. No obligations, obviously. It's just a matter of you going ahead and trying it and confirming that it has value. There's no limitations on the demo, so it's not like it's a restricted demo. It's full access. If you have 100 people that you want to have access to the system, we put all 100 people on the system, and you just go ahead and play with it and confirm its value in the organization. It's also a really good way to sort of determine what your needs are going to be. A lot of times I do demos and people say to me, well, we don't really know what we need, what do we need? And I'll say, well, I don't know what you need, and probably you don't know what you need either until you actually start messing around with it. So that's what the demo really helps with, is sort of determine, where the natural applications are in your organization. And where it really can be implemented to best effect. So if you're interested in either a demo, like a live demo, or if you're interested in a 30-day trial, once again, absolutely no obligation, doesn't obligate you to anything at all. By all means, please either email me or call me directly on my cell phone. I'd be absolutely really happy to help you out with that. Like I said, we do have a couple of college sector employment service agencies already using it in both of the locations. Algonquin uses it in Perth and in Pembroke, and Loyalist uses it in Bancroft and in Belleville. And I'm sure that you could connect with either Brent or Joanne and confirm the value of the system with them as well. So that concludes my presentation. Anybody have any additional questions about any of this?
We'll just give it a minute, Paul, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
We can open up the floor. But it certainly sounds like it could be a great tool, because I think the biggest problem we have is connecting with our clients. They all seem to go AWOL, whether they have a job or not. So, this is what we hear from our clients, right? I mean, we can't reach them any other way, but we send them a text, and somebody that we haven't been able to reach in weeks, they respond in 20 seconds. Yeah. And essentially, it's got to do with the fact that everybody uses text. People have this intimate connection with their cell phones. I mean, statistically, I think people check their phones about 150 times a day, regardless of it dinging or making a message sound or anything. People are just dialed into their phones. So, I mean, if you want to reach somebody, even if they do have data on their phones or landlines or whatever, text messages are always read. They're 99.9% of text messages are read, and read within 3 minutes. So it's a really effective way to reach people.
regardless of who they are.
Okay. So no other questions have come in. So I guess on that note, we'll wrap up. So we have recorded this, so it will be downloaded and in the YouTube. Paul has also given you his contact information if you want to approach him directly, and he will have a copy of the YouTube as well if you want to share it with other staff members. And so I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and I hope the rest of your day is going well. Is that it, Paul, from you?
Absolutely, and I just want to thank you, both you, Janet, and everyone who's on the call for spending some time here with me today. I really appreciate that. By all means, any questions about the service too, reach out at any time. I'm always here. I'm always happy to help. You're certainly most welcome.
Okay, so I'm just receiving thank yous now. So again, thank you very much, Paul, for taking the time to share this with us, and hopefully you'll get some interest from the network.
Well, I really hope so, and you're very welcome. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, thank you, everybody.